Hello again, wrestling fans, and welcome to another edition of the This Week in History show presented by the Scumbags Wrestling. We are going to look back at July 9th to the 15th in this week's episode. Thank you for joining us, whether you're watching on YouTube or Facebook and listening later on Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or anywhere else you get your podcasts from. Right here in usually in London, Ontario, but I am in Windsor, Ontario for this week's episode, visiting family and in-laws and making sure everybody's doing great. I want to thank you for joining us for your noon dive into the rich history of our great sport. I want to remind everybody that we are sponsored by Coolbet. Stay cool, bet responsibly. You can go to their website and bet on various sports and games. Plus, you can also go to our wonderful page over at Pro Wrestling Tees. Our store has 4 designs there. The Ontario Independent Wrestling comic book cover will always support Steven's wrestling journey. Steven actually just turned 10 today, the day we're recording, so I wish him a happy birthday. But all the money raised from the shirts are going to go to Curie Malformation Research through Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto. So help support that research. And Steven is a wonderful kid. And if we can help out others that have the same condition as him, it's all the better. So, I think I got almost everything in there in that introduction. We are going to have more information later on our show, the regular podcast, which is going to actually happen Saturday, on leading into the couple pay-per-views that are happening this weekend. But the Scumbags Prediction League has a double shot weekend, so stay tuned for information on that. And also, we are sponsors of the All Ontario Cup, happening through Barrie Wrestling. So more information happening on our regular podcast. But I'm going to bring in Jonesy, who's in Niagara Falls, and had some good news going back to work. Your regular job. So
yeah, my regular job. I'm going back to work tomorrow, and then of course, Ribfest in London is a go, so I will be down in London for that.
Yeah, so we definitely look forward to Ribfest. We're going to see about plugging that as it gets closer to the end of the month, and encourage all our fans to come down to London and experience one of the first and maybe only festivals that are happening this summer as COVID restrictions start lifting. So it's great news for people in southwestern Ontario if they want to make the trip, and of course, definitely in the hub of it, London. For Ribfest. So a yearly tradition that unfortunately was missed last year due to COVID restrictions, but we're seeing a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel. We're still in the tunnel, but it's getting brighter.
It is getting brighter, but of course, there always can be another scary monster just lurking behind us.
Yep, you never know what's going to happen. But let's take advantage of it and be safe and responsible and enjoy ourselves while we still can.
That's right.
So, as I said, we are looking at the week of July 15th July 9th through the 15th. So, whenever you're ready, I got the visual presentation.
All right, here we go. July 9th, 58 years ago in Minnesota, the Crusher defeated Vern Gagne to win the AWA World Heavyweight Championship. And a bloody one at that, apparently, by that pitcher. 36 years ago in Shelby, North Carolina, the Rock and Roll Express, Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson defeated Ivan Koloff and Crusher Khrushchev to win the NWA World Tag Team Championship.
Yeah, wrestling fans may or may not realize that Crusher Khrushchev was another American that was made into a Russian. And in this case, the American that was made into the Russian was Barry Darsow, also known as Smash Demolition, and later on Repo Man and Blacktop Bully. So
Repo.
That's another American turned Russian, and also Boris Zukov was an American turned Russian.
Yes, indeed he was. 35 years ago in Sydney, Australia, the fabulous Moolah would win the WWF Women's title back from Velvet McIntyre since losing it to her a whole 6 days prior.
Yeah, that's one of those championship reigns that were never ending since basically Moolah controlled the women's scene throughout all of wrestling. And, she might give a rub to one of her girls here and there for 6 whole days. But if you look in the history books, she was actually holding the championship for 30 some odd years, 37, I think. And if you unfortunately see, I think there's a dark side of the ring involving her and the not so nice side of Fabulous Moolah, which when that came out, Snickers did not like that the Women's Battle Royal at WrestleMania was going to be named after Moolah, and they put their foot down, and money clearly talked from Snickers when WWE dropped the Fabulous Moolah name on the Women's Battle Royal.
And pretty much she was the women's division in the WWF for years.
Yep.
There was nobody else. 21 years ago, WCW presented Bash at the Beach from Daytona Beach, Florida. The pay-per-view number dropped big time. Back in 98, the number was 58,000. 2 years later, in 2000, only 100,000 ordered it on pay-per-view. And I think I'm missing a number there. It's probably supposed to be 258,000, but I'm going to check that later. Adding a question mark to my notes. Where is that question mark?
Yeah, they had a huge drop, and you'll get into what the picture up above is related to.
Some of the matches on that card, we had Chronic, Brian Adams and Brian Clark defeating the Perfect Event, Sean Stasiak and Chuck Palumbo to win the WCW World Tag Team Championship. Vampiro defeated the Kiss Demon in a graveyard match, and Hulk Hogan defeated Jeff Jarrett to win the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. So the Hogan match starts with Jeff Jarrett laying down for Hogan. Vince Russo, who was sitting at the commentating table, threw the WCW title at the feet of Hogan, with Russo telling him to take it. Hogan then gets on the mic and says, "This is the reason this company is in the damn shape it's in, because of bullshit like this." Many people were confused by this time. Prior to all this, behind the curtain all day had Hogan and Russo bumping heads to how the match was supposed to end. And in the end, Hogan went to Bischoff, and they hatched a different plan that Russo reluctantly goes with their plan of Hogan winning and then disappearing so that WCW would do a tournament for the belt since Hogan left. Once a new champion is crowned, Hogan would come back and say, "Brother, I'm the real champion, brother." Well, that's one theory, at least. And there's been a lot of theories of what exactly happened down there, whether it was a shoot or not. It was different and had people definitely talking. Some feel it pulled the curtain a little too far back on wrestling. Russo would get in the ring and go on why a Hogan is a piece of crap. And the last line of Russo saying, "And Hogan, you big bald son of a bitch, kiss my ass." Your thoughts on that whole thing?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. A lot of people hold Vince Russo accountable for the downfall of wrestling, especially WCW, and also at the same time credit him as being somewhat of a genius when it came to wrestling and writing stuff. He started off as a writer for WWE Magazine, inspired the Raw magazine, which was then more a grittier, behind-the-scenes look at things, and he then eventually made his way, made his way to the planning circle that Vince had around him that included people like Pat Patterson, Jim Cornette, and Bruce Pritchard. And the one great thing that was in place there was that Russo was filtered whenever he had ideas. I think in that regards, he did have great plans, because at one point during the Attitude Era, everybody had a storyline going on, as opposed to only select ones and everybody else just floundering. So that was the upside, but there was always a filter there. When he got a huge deal from WCW because things started going downhill and people thought, hey, Vince Russo and Ed Ferreira are the reasons why WWE is successful. They brought them over. They walked out on Vince McMahon, but they didn't have that filter there. And we saw all the shit that flow from their papers and pens happen on WCW TV. And as that was going on, wrestlers were taking off, fans were taking off, sponsors were leaving, and it didn't help at the same time that AOL, Time Warner were doing the merge, and Ted Turner started losing more and more power of his own company, that people couldn't just write Ted Turner's checkbook. Mm-hmm. So it was a bad thing, and you got Russo coming up with different ideas. There's talked about on Jeff Jarrett's My World podcast how Jarrett and Russo were really close friends at one point and sort of connected, and that's why Jarrett was always going over when Russo was writing stuff. I haven't actually listened to the episode involving this, but I believe there is an episode on My World talking about this bash at the beach where he laid down, because then there was lawsuits going on. It was just a real debacle, and to have it actually play out live in front of fans definitely was very unprofessional. Regardless of your wanting to see the behind the scenes stuff, there's should be still a line of professionalism, and that was totally lost on that whole night.
Indeed. A couple of the matches on that card, there was actually other matches. Goldberg defeated Kevin Nash, and per the pre-match stipulations, Scott Hall's contract with WCW was null and void. Booker T defeated Jeff Jarrett to win the WCW World Heavyweight Championship, and Booker would become the second African-American to hold the WCW World title.
Behind the next guy that we're about to talk about.
20 years ago on Raw is War from Hotlanta, the APA, Farouk and Bradshaw defeated the Dudley Boys, Bubba Ray and Devon, to win the WWF Tag Team Championship. The show's focus would be on the war between WCW and WWF, who were to join forces to take out the reformed ECW team. While WCW and WWF imploded in the ring, ECW would come from the crowd and get in the ring. The night would end with ECW and WCW joining forces to form the Alliance, who challenged the WWF to a match at the next Invasion pay-per-view.
That was actually a really good angle. I loved it because nobody saw the ECW part of it coming. They had so many guys from ECW working there. Even Paul Heyman was on commentary because Jerry Lawler had been walked out after the firing of his wife, Miss Kitty. So there was a lot of elements there which would have, I think we sort of talked about in a little bit before when the sale went through, they should have held off like they did with the ECW part of the Alliance and waited till they had more members of the old WCW in place, which would have made sense of all of a sudden, here's this invasion, a true invasion of them trying to take over WWF, but adding them to the WCW kind of did strengthen it, but it was still a watered down version. But having ECW and WCW going after WWF for taking them out made sense at the same time. But they had the two groups, WCW and WWF, going against each other, and ECW invaded. And just as they thought that they were having the numbers game, that's when the ECW guys turned and took out the WWE guys along with WCW. It was a really good turn in that case. I love that part, but still a very watered down invasion.
Indeed. And it's a happy 46th birthday to Shelton Benjamin and a happy 67th birthday to Kevin Scott Nash, who, of course, has been many different things, but most famously, I'd say probably Big Daddy Cool, or by his name, Kevin Nash, certainly not Oz. Though I do wonder where that big cloak is.
Yeah, and what's not on here, I only found this picture actually that somebody else had already made. with the three characters. But of course, there is missing Vinny Vegas on this, which was the character that sparked Shawn Michaels to go, that guy needs to be my bodyguard, and calling him up and getting him into WWF. And actually, this past Sunday, there's a Broken Skull Sessions episode on the network featuring Kevin Nash and being interviewed by Steve Austin, because this past week on the WWE Network has been a tribute to the NWO 25 years.
Yeah, I'll have to watch that then.
Sean Waltman was on the bump, and there's, as I said, Kevin Nash with Austin.
July, my phone's going off. I'll just have to hang up on my wife. Haha. July 10th, 33 years ago, Jim Crockett Promotions presented the Great American Bash 88, the Price for Freedom, from the Baltimore Arena. This would mark the first time the Great American Bash was available on pay-per-view. Though the Bash started in 85, this was the first on pay-per-view. And Sean, if you'd just go through the card, and I'm going to respond to my wife.
Excellent. So the Midnight Express, Bobby Eaton and Stan Lane defeated the Fantastics, Bobby Fulton and Tommy Rogers, to win the NWA United States Tag Team Championship. This was at a time when they had the World Tag Team titles and the United States Tag Team titles. So it was almost like how WWE would, and WCW would have the World title and then the US or Intercontinental Championship, where you'd get that and maybe eventually elevate to the world title status. So there was obviously also enough tag teams to fill that division. Jim Cornette was suspended above the ring in a cage prior to the match. I thought I did have a picture of that, but not available here. The Road Warriors, Hawk and Animal, Steve Williams, Jimmy Garvin, and Ron Garvin defeated Kevin Sullivan, Mike Rotunda, Al Perez, the Russian Assassin, and Ivan Koloff in a Tower of Doom match. And the main event saw Ric Flair defeat Lex Luger via referee stoppage to retain the NWA World Heavyweight Championship due to the Maryland State Athletic Commission calling for the match to end due to excessive blood from Luger. And the bout was stopped by the State Athletic Commission, where the bout awarding the bout to Flair. Luckily for Flair, as Luger had Flair in the torture rack at the time of the stoppage. And yeah, that's the interesting part of, especially back then, because kayfabe was still highly existing, and they had to go by athletic commissions, even though we all know that things are predetermined. And in this regards, that's where you get the sports entertainment side of things.
Yes.
And that's, I think, one of the things that has fueled Vince McMahon in doing the sports entertainment, quote unquote, style of business, because then you don't have those state athletic commissions coming in like it's a real boxing event or a UFC event, and just basically getting a fee for you to be there. Like these companies before kayfabe got busted, kicked down, were paying these athletic commissions thousands of dollars just so they could put on this, what we basically are considering seeing an exhibition and a sports themed play in this regards. But they were legitimately paying these guys money for things that they had no real say over, but kayfabe held out. And
yep.
But yep.
All right, thank you for that. 20 years ago at a SmackDown taping in Birmingham, Alabama, Jeff Hardy defeated Mike Awesome to win the WWF Hardcore Championship, and Kurt Angle would give his rendition of Jimmy Crack Corn.
Yeah, with this lovely picture right there. They recently reenacted that on the Broken Skulls session, and that's the actual hat that Steve gave him all those years ago. And I did actually listen to the Kurt Angle podcast with, it wasn't Conrad that week because he was away for his birthday, but he wore that during the podcast recording as well, because it's also a visual one. And apparently Steve Austin had picked up that hat and a couple other the real hats that him and Vince wore at an airport, and just brought it to TV. And they decided, oh, let's go do this. But it took hours for them to record the actual behind the scenes segments, because they were laughing their head off so many times. And Vince got so pissed off at them that he said, if you guys laugh anymore, I'm fining you $2,000 for every time you laugh. And thankfully they were able to stop and get through it. But yeah, just comedy improv gold in a way for that era. And it was a way of keeping them both on TV, even though they were both quite beaten down at the time.
Mm-hmm. All right. After Jimmy cracked corn, we're going to 19 years ago in Philly. Sanjay Dutt defeated Roderick Strong in the final match to win the Combat Zone Wrestling's Best of Best 4 tournament. 10 years ago, TNA presented Destination X from Orlando, Florida. On the card, Rob Van Dam defeated Jerry Lynn. Austin Aries wins a TNA contract against 3 others. Brian Kendrick defeated Abyss to win the TNA X Division Championship, and AJ Styles defeated Christopher Daniels. 6 years ago at Evolve 45 in Florida, Timothy Thatcher defeated Drew Galloway to unify the Dragon Gate USA Open, the Federation Gate, and Evolve Championships.
Yeah, 5 years ago, those are now available on WWE Network. A lot of stars that are now in the main roster and NXT basically made their way from Evolve. I think Evolve ended up closing down officially, but there had been talk of doing a NXT Evolve, which would be guys making their way from wherever to get to NXT, now that NXT is almost a third brand, getting to be on par with Raw and SmackDown. So you'd have almost 3 tiers of WWE going on with Evolve, NXT, and then the main roster of Raw and SmackDown.
Definitely a lot of wrestling right now. Oh, yeah. 5 years ago at UFC 200 in Las Vegas, Nevada, Brock Lesnar defeated Mark Hunt by a unanimous decision. Lesnar made a record $2.5 million for the fight. Lesnar would lose 10% of his winnings for failing a drug test and was suspended for a year by the Nevada State Athletic Commission. His win was overturned to a no contest.
Yeah, that's the interesting part with UFC being able to do that, because a report came out this week about a opponent that CM Punk had and lost to Mike Jackson, I believe, and he tested positive for marijuana. So all of a sudden, that whole thing got turned into a no contest, and now CM Punk's record is sitting at 1 loss, 1 no contest, and, well, he's never returning. But it's interesting that they're able to go back and do the drug tests and turn over results.
You know, I think there should be 2 divisions in pretty much every sport. There should be the clean version. And then, hey, if you want to pump your body with a whole bunch of chemicals so you can go out there and just cream someone, I say go for it. It should be allowed. Well, they just need to split up the divisions. Those that follow the traditional rules, and then the others that don't.
I can understand that in a way for a legit sport like UFC is portrayed to be. But then there's the other side of things where I don't get why there's such a uproar over steroid use in professional wrestling, because, like we just said a little while ago, it is performance art. So regardless of you jacking your body up to look like an Adonis, like somebody like a Chris Masters, and going out there, if the boss says you're losing, you're losing. Like that. Why do you think Rey Mysterio got over giants, including the Big Show? Because the boss said, you're losing. Like, in reality, the Giant should be killing Rey Mysterio.
Oh, absolutely.
Not in the world of wrestling. And so, like I said, jack yourself up all you want. You got a great look. Doesn't mean you're going to win.
I mean, some will say it's because of, health reasons and all that, but others would say that it's more just people sticking their nose in where it doesn't belong.
Yeah. And then that's that fine line between sport and entertainment, where there's a lot of things that the real world, the entertainment world, like Law and Order, can get away with different things like bombings and shootings and all this other stuff, but that would not be allowed in wrestling, even though it's entertainment.
I mean, hey, in an octagon, what would you rather see? Two clean fighters go against each other, or two road-raged crazy maniacs ripping each other apart? I go for the maniacs.
Fight to the death like the old Roman times.
Absolutely. But hey, it's a happy 62nd birthday for Dwayne Gill. In fact, Dwayne Gill will call anybody on their birthday for $7, I believe it is, $7 or $9, and he actually does a fantastic job of it. Veteran WWF jobber who had success in '98 when he was the surprise opponent for Mankind at Survivor Series. 2 days later, he would win the WWF Lightweight Championship from Christian. Then Gillberg was born, a better version of Goldberg. Gillberg would lose the lightweight belt to S.A. Rios after holding it for 15 months. He'd take the Gillberg character on the indie scene and make occasional appearances in the WWE. Dwayne Gill is married with 3 children. And as I said, I believe he's only $7 for a birthday call.
You gotta check out a cameo.
Yes. And today would have been the 95th birthday of Reginald Loswiski, a.k.a. The Crusher. And if you want to visualize what he looks like, if you can't see the picture, it's basically just before you're about to take a big dump or big fart, and you get just a little whiff of it as you're doing it. That's the face he's making there.
It's basically Barney Rubble.
It is Barney Rubble. July 11th, 60 years ago in Minnesota, Gene Kaninsky defeated Vern Gagne to win the AWA World Heavyweight Championship.
Canada's
34.
Own.
Sorry.
Canada's Own.
Canada's Own. That's right. 34 years ago in Greensboro, North Carolina, Lex Luger defeated Nikita Koloff to win the NWA United States Championship. Also 34 years ago in Oklahoma, Dr. Death Steve Williams defeated Big Bubba Rogers to win and become the last UWF heavyweight champion and the company's only babyface to hold the title.
Yeah, and I think this is the Bill Watts version of the UWF before it sold over.
Yes, I do believe.
The NWA, not the coked up version of UWF that was portrayed on Dark Side of the Ring.
32 years ago in Japan, Stan Hansen and Generico Tenryu defeated Jumbo Tsuruta and Yoshiaki Yatsu to win the All Japan Pro Wrestling World Tag Team Championship. 22 years ago, WCW presented Bash at the Beach 99 from Fort Lauderdale. In the main event, we saw Randy Savage and Sid Vicious defeat Kevin Nash and Sting. As Savage got the winning fall in the match, he would win the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. 17 years ago, WWE presented Vengeance. We seen La Resistance, Robert Conway and Sullivan Grenier defeat Ric Flair and Eugene by DQ to retain the World Tag Team Championship. Matt Hardy defeated Kane in a no DQ match. And Edge defeated Randy Orton to win the WWE IC Championship. And Chris Benoit defeated Triple H to retain the World Heavyweight Championship. 16 years ago on Raw from New Jersey, Matt Hardy would make his return to WWE 3 months after he was released from the company. That release stemmed from being injured, expendable, and because Edge and Matt's girlfriend Lita were doing the rated R. News got out and Matt was let go.
Yeah, because he ended up, this was early in the years of internet, but he was using it to his advantage and posting a lot of things and comments and videos and before they would get the hype that we see now. And it drew a lot of attention negatively on the company, but they were able to actually take that swell that fans were having following Matt and took advantage of it and brought him back. And I think we talked last week about how Amy was not in the best mindset when that happened because she was getting abused by the fans, calling her various derogatory names, and it made it hard for her to get up. But it was based on this story that leaked and shouldn't have, in a way, between Matt and Edge. And it basically stemmed from the fact that Matt was injured and Lita was still working. And of course, travel buddies became Edge and Lita, and one thing led to another, and oops.
Yep, but hey, you know what? If you're going to do stuff like that, you got to expect bad things are going to happen.
Yep.
16 years ago in Tokyo, Japan, Shinya Hashimoto died of a brain aneurysm. He was just 40 years old. He was one-third of the Three Musketeers with Chono and Muda. 12 years ago at UFC 100 in Las Vegas, Nevada, Brock Lesnar defeated Frank Mir via TKO in the second round to unify the UFC heavyweight and interim heavyweight championships.
It's quite the row there of guys, considering you have Lesnar, Mir, George St. Pierre, Bisbane. There's a lot of, and Henderson, really great guys there. I'm not sure who Elvis is, but I don't really follow UFC close enough, but that is like a top 6 probably of that time.
Yeah, I could only name one of these guys if the names weren't there. 11 years ago, TNA presented Victory Road. Angelina Love defeated Madison Rayne to become the new TNA Knockouts champion and avoided retirement had she lost. Hernandez defeated Matt Morgan in a steel cage. The Motor City Machine Guns, Alex Shelley and Chris Sabin, defeated Beer Money, Inc., James Storm and Robert Roode to win the vacated TNA World Tag Team Championship. And Rob Van Dam defeated Jeff Hardy, Mr. Anderson, and Abyss in a 4-way match to retain the TNA World Heavyweight Belt. 10 years ago at an Impact taping, Sting defeated Mr. Anderson to win the TNA World Heavyweight Championship for his 4th and final time. 8 years ago, WWE opens their Performance Center in Winter Park, Florida. The center includes 7 training rings, a strength and conditioning program, edit and production facilities, a beautiful ceiling fan, and a voiceover room that performers and announcers can practice. Some of the training rings are different. One is designed for high-flying moves, and one is the show ring with all the bells and whistles, including ring, apron, and lighting. So that's pretty neat. You can go from one ring to another. They're a little different. I didn't know that they actually had different rings in there. It doesn't surprise me about the having one that has all the bells and whistles, but I can see one that's so you can do certain bumps and without killing yourself while you're practicing.
Yeah, learning some high flying. If you look in the picture that's on display, the upper left-hand side, there's actually, it looks like somebody either doing a senton or some sort of moonsault going on up there. You got arm drags going down below. Up there, also in the middle at the top, is the where the 2 WWE logos are. That's actually an entrance ramp where people were learning how to get do their entrances and stuff like that. So there's so many things involved with there. But at the moment, I'm not sure what's all gone on with it. If those rings are all there at the moment for sure, because this got turned into the CWC, the Capital Wrestling Center, and that's where we're seeing NXT be recorded each and every week right now with fans. So it's a whole lot different setup going on there. You mentioned the big fan because just after the pandemic started, they did WrestleMania from there, and all you saw was this big fan hanging above the ring and stuff like that. But this is actually also the room that they did WrestleMania 36 in.
Yep. Yeah, it's an impressive building. And I wouldn't be surprised if you actually see them build another facility that is bigger, or just buy their own damn arena somewhere.
Yep. Anything's possible.
And it's also a happy 41st birthday to Theodore James Wilson, a.k.a. Tyson Kidd.
Yeah, I need to definitely send him a message, because the one awesome part about Tyson Kidd or TJ Wilson is the fact that he is very interactive with his fans for the last, I would say at least, I'm going to say probably 10 years now. Whenever it's my birthday, he's sending me a message on my Facebook Messenger wishing me a happy birthday. And depending on what the day is like, we sometimes spend a good half hour just chatting away and how things are going, and giving props for what he's been doing lately. Right now, he's doing a lot of the stuff with the women's division. It helps that his wife, Natty, is part of that. But a lot of people are giving him a lot of credit for some of the best matches that are coming out of the women lately. It's unfortunate that his career kind of got cut short after taking a muscle buster from Samoa Joe and getting injured and needing neck surgery. But it almost seems at times when you see him that he could probably return at any time. It just hasn't happened because his value is being seen behind the scenes as an agent.
Mm-hmm.
But a really great guy. If you ever connect with him on Facebook, be sure to, he's probably going to send a birthday message, because he's really interactive, as I said, with his fans.
And that's great to hear. July 12th, 35 years ago in Madison Square Garden in New York City, Bruno Sammartino and Tito Santana defeated WWF IC champ Randy Savage and Adrian Adonis in a steel cage match. This was Bruno's final appearance at MSG until his induction into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2013.
Yeah, hell froze over that day.
It sure did. 29, I heard he listened to an Eagles song before you went out there. 29 years ago, WCW presented the Great American Bash 92 from Georgia. There wouldn't be another Great American Bash until 1995. This event would crown new NWA tag champs, as the belts were vacated when the WCW created their own tag belts. Until September of 93, both of these belts, the WCW and NWA, would be defended together. WCW World Tag Champions Terry Gordy and Steve Williams defeated Dustin Rhodes and Barry Windham to win the NWA World Tag Team Championship. Also on that night, Big Van Vader defeated Sting to win the WCW World Heavyweight Championship for the first time of his 3 reigns. 22 years ago, Jack Tunney leaves the WWF. There are a lot of theories as to why Tunney left the WWF. Some of them, theory 1 is Tunney was using his WWF funds to pay off gambling debts, and Vince found out. Theory 2 was because of budget cuts and because Tunney received a percentage of all Canadian shows since 1984. Wow, that would be a great deal to have. Theory 3 involved Tunney's cousin Jack, who was responsible for getting Skydome for WrestleMania 6 and trademarked the name WrestleMania in Canada, which caused some issues, of course, with Vince. 34, Tunney wasn't sold on Brett as a main eventer, which Brett says is a lie. And 35, Gorilla Monsoon wanted the kayfabe president spot, so Gorilla got the Russians to fix the election. That made Monsoon the new WWF president.
Makes total sense.
Yes. 23 years ago, WCW presented Bash at the Beach. This was their most watched pay-per-view of 98. Chavo Guerrero shaved his own head when Uncle Eddie beat him in a hair versus hair match. Rey Mysterio Jr. defeated Chris Jericho to win the WCW Cruiserweight Championship. However, the next night on Nitro, the belt was given back to Jericho due to the interference from Stinko Malenko. And Hollywood Hogan and Dennis Rodman defeated Diamond Dallas Page and Karl Malone.
Yeah, decent pay-per-view, really. And it's not surprising that it was one of their highest grossers at that time. But you could see some of the cracks in the wall. But when the main event is filled with two basketball stars, that's just kind of crazy. And the fact that Dennis Rodman cared so much about his outside adventures with WCW and costing somewhat the basketball games of the Bulls in their pursuit of the championships. It was actually documented a bit in the documentary that was done. I had the title of it a moment ago, but it was involving the 6 championships of the Bulls. And they did look at where Rodman was during some of that. And the NWO was brought up.
But hey, he did it.
Yep.
And, I thought he was great for WCW. Mind you, I had no interest in seeing the match itself. But, it was an interesting storyline. And that's just the way WCW flowed.
It was also more believable if Karl Malone was doing something to Hogan rather than at Road Wild seeing Jay Leno putting an armbar on Hogan.
Yeah, that was bad. But hey, Jay Leno is so famous, he can't do no wrong. Let's see, where are we now? 21 years ago on Nitro from Jackson, Florida, Hollywood Hogan would defeat Macho Man Randy Savage to win the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. This would be the second time that Hogan would win the belt from Savage on Nitro one night after Savage won it on pay-per-view. The other time was at Spring Stampede 98.
I love it when Hogan has so much stroke and power over booking and would always screw over the Macho Man.
For much. 14 years ago at a SmackDown taping, Finlay defeated Bobby Lashley to win the WWE United States Championship. 10 years ago at an Impact taping, Brooke Tessmacher and Tara defeated Mexican America, Rosita and Sarita, to win the TNA Knockouts Tag Team Championship. 8 years ago on Shine Wrestling, they presented Shine 11 from Florida. To celebrate their 1-year anniversary, the promotion featured a one-night tournament to crown the first ever Shine champion. In the finals, Rain defeated Ma Yim to win the Shine Championship. Other participants included Lufisto, Su Young, Amazing Kong, Sarah Knight, Evelise, and others.
Yeah, Saraya Knight is actually the mother of Paige.
Yes.
Was being part of that. And Mia Yim, I got to see her at a Smash Wrestling tournament that had her going against Matt Riddle.
Right.
A really hard-hitting match between the two. It's unfortunate that Mia has not been back on WTV after the disastrous appearance with Retribution. And she was going by the name Reckoning with a mask on, but she's supposed to appear on SmackDown and hasn't yet. But then, of course, they're having issues with her fiance, Keith Lee, being back on TV. So she might be a part of that whole thing, too. So.
And a couple of birthdays. We got a happy 37th birthday to Remy Sabi, a.k.a. Sami Zayn. I'm not even sure if I'm saying his last name right there. Sabi,
Yeah, I'm not
something
sure.
like that. And it's a happy 47th birthday to Gregory Shane Helms,
There we go.
also known, of course, as the Hurricane.
Stand back. There's a hurricane coming through.
Great character.
And he works behind the scenes. It's the weird thing about things right now. Like, he was able to pull off this hurricane character and took it even to the indie scene and stuff like that. And it even spawned off having Mighty Molly, Super Stacy, Rosie being the superhero in training. Yes, that's just spelled shit.
Yes.
But that all happened and people accepted it. And now today on WDTV, we have Nikki Cross becoming Nikki Ash and being a superhero herself. Almost a superhero, should I say. That's what Ash stands for. And people are crapping on it. And it was her idea. But you can go back all the way to Helms, and it was a success. I just don't understand the difference in time that people can't wrap their mind around something fun and entertaining.
It might be because wrestling right now, like in certain things are silly or seen silly now, where other characters that might have not been a good idea 10 years ago are a good idea now. So I think it's just the change of the times. WWE to me has kind of gone back to its cartooniness.
A bit, yeah.
And hopefully they get a hard edge again at some point. And
we'll have to see after what happens now that they're going to have fans back, and that actually starts tomorrow night on SmackDown with fans being back in Houston on a regular basis.
Okay, moving on to July 13th. 39 years ago in Allentown, Pennsylvania, Mr. Fuji and Mr. Sato defeated Chief Jay Strongbow, Chief Jay and Julia Strongbow to win the WWF Tag Team Championship. 33 years ago, WWF taped the 100th episode of Superstars of Wrestling. I heard it was pandemonium. That's all I had on that. 26 years ago in Tokyo, Japan, Wild Pegasus, who was amassed Chris Benoit, defeated Shinjiro Otani in the final match to win the Best of the Super Juniors tournament for his second time in 3 years. The next foreigner, Gaijin, that's the name in Japan that is a foreigner called a Gaijin, to win this tournament wouldn't be until 2010 when Ireland's Prince DeWitt did it in 2010.
Yeah, Prince Devitt, also known as
Devitt, sorry.
Finn Balor.
Yes. That's a V, not a W, my brain. 25 years ago, ECW presented Heatwave 96 from Philly. Some of the matches on the card saw Shane Douglas defeat Chris Jericho, Pitbull number 2, and Too Cold Scorpio in an elimination match to win the ECW World TV belt. Terry Gordy, the Sandman, and Tommy Dreamer defeated Brian Lee, Raven, and Stevie Richards in a Rage in the Cage match. This match had a strange stipulation that if anyone pinned Stevie Richards, they would win Raven's ECW belt. Sandman pinned Raven, so the championship did not change hands. Goofy. 24 years ago, WCW presented Bash at the Beach 97. Chris Jericho defeated Ultimo Dragon to retain the WCW Cruiserweight Championship. Chris Benoit defeated Kevin Sullivan. As a result of loss, Sullivan was forced to leave WCW. This would be Sullivan's final WCW match. Scott Hall and Macho Man Randy Savage defeated Diamond Dallas Page and Kurt Hennig, and Lex Luger and the Giant defeated Dennis Rodman and Hollywood Hogan.
Aloha from the commentating desk.
Yeah, and I think that might have been the event that Dusty said Rebbe Shock. It's one of the Bash of the Beaches. Okay, moving on. It's 19 years ago. Or am I on that one? Yes, I am.
Yep.
19 years ago on Raw's War from East Rutherford, New Jersey, Kane and Mankind defeated the New Age Outlaws to win the WWF Tag Team Championship. Later in the show, the Outlaws would use their rematch clause. In the rematch that night, both teams would fight to a no contest.
What a good use of a rematch clause.
Yeah. 12 years ago, controversy in the WWE as the network carrying SmackDown, UPN, orders that the Muhammad Hassan character off TV due to a terrorist angle, including The Undertaker. And it didn't help that it aired on the same day as terrorist attack in London, England. The story would reach mainstream news feeds. The WWE would have his attorney, which was Tommaso Ciampa, state that Hassan would not be appearing until the Great American Bash due to the backlash. The WWE would drop the character and release Mark Copani, who would play Hassan. Copani would retire from wrestling and is now an American school principal. Hassan is one of many in a class action suit against the WWE for traumatic brain injuries caused by wrestling.
Yeah, so as you see on the screen, if you're able to, the top left-hand corner has that angle where all of a sudden these terrorists ended up taking out Undertaker and carrying him out. They used even zip lines and to strangle him, and it just looked really bad. Down below is the lawyer on the right-hand side of that picture, what Tommaso Ciampa looked like then compared to what Tommaso Ciampa looks like now as part of NXT. And of course, on the right-hand side of your screen, you see Mark Copani as Muhammad Hassan and what he looks like today as the school principal. It's kind of sad that this gentleman who is actually Italian was made into this character that went definitely way overboard on what I think could have gotten over as a character, could have even been a babyface, where the fact of the matter was they were playing off obviously 9/11 and everything, the terrorist thing, but he originally came in as somebody who was misunderstood because of his culture and didn't want to be labeled the same as all other Muslims and Arabs as being a terrorist. And next thing you know, they're going down that path and putting him with Davari, and then they're escalating it to these terrorist things. It was just like, are you kidding me? He could have had a sympathetic guy and not be understood and turn his back on the fans as though they turned on him, and could have had him a heel. They went after Undertaker, which the guy probably should not have been in a position going against Undertaker that soon. But then they did this stupid terrorist thing, and that was recorded on a Tuesday, and SmackDown, I think, was Thursday that week. And that 2 days later, after they had recorded it, was when the incident happened in the UK. And for whatever reason, they couldn't halt that segment from showing, because obviously with it not being live, but they somehow couldn't get the tape back and edit that out. And it played on SmackDown that same night, and that definitely caused a huge backlash. And as you said, Ciampa had said that he's not going to appear until the Great American Bash. And the Great American Bash, they opened up the ramp or the staging, and he got last rode through it, and that was the last we saw of him.
Poor guy. This was also the same day as on WWE.com's Bite This. Matt Hardy called in, confronting Amy Dumas, a.k.a. Lita, during an interview as to why she left him for Adam Copeland. This was just a big old hot mess on TV is what that was.
Oh, yeah.
13 years ago, TNA presented Victory Road from Houston, Texas. The Latin American Exchange, Homicide, and Hernandez defeated Beer Money, James Storm, and Robert Roode in a fans' revenge lumberjack match to win the TNA World's Tag Team Championship. And Team TNA, Curryman, Alex Shelley, and Chris Sabin defeated Team International, which was Alex Kozlov, Doug Williams, and Tyson Dukes. Team Japan was Milano Collection AT and Masato Yoshino, and Puma. And of course, Team Mexico was Ultimo Guerrero, Ray Bucanero, and Venero. God, these names. And Team Mexico would end in an Ultimate X match with Team Mexico picking up the World X Cup. And the main event was Samoa Joe fought Booker T to a no contest for the TNA World Heavyweight Championship. 9 years ago on Impact, AJ Styles defeated Rob Terry to win the TNA Global Championship. Also on the show, Madison Rayne is awarded the TNA Knockouts belt after threatening to sue the company following the controversial finish to the title match at Victory Road earlier in the week. 6 years ago on Raw from Atlanta, Georgia, a lot of NXT women make their WWE main roster debuts. NXT Women's Champion Sasha Banks, former NXT Women's Champion Charlotte, and Becky Lynch. They would all confront the main roster ladies and get it on. Less than a year later, all three women would headline WrestleMania 23 for the reincarnated Women's Championship belt. It's a happy 49th birthday for Shawn Michael Waltman, NWOers for life, X-Pac. And it's a happy 54th birthday to Hisako Sasaki, but wrestling fans may know her best as Akira Hokoto. Sasaki began a wrestling journey by quitting high school and pursued a pro wrestling career. She would win the Rookie of the Year honors for All Japan Women's Pro Wrestling at age 18 and become one of their most popular performers. She would hold the WWA World Tag Belts 3 times, the All-Pacific Championship twice, and the AJW Junior Championship. Her style of putting her body on the line would earn her the nickname the Dangerous Queen. Story has it that she broke her neck after a second rope tombstone piledriver and finished the final 2 falls while holding her head up with her hands. She also took on another nickname, the Mummy, after wrapping her broken parts when she would injure herself. She was married to wrestler Kenzuki Sasaki, and they have 2 children together. She is also a breast cancer survivor. She was also inducted into the AJW Hall of Fame in 98, and she's also responsible for organizing the Bull Nakano fan club.
Very nice. Crazy lady, though, to break her neck and still keep on going.
They're tough. July 14th, 35 years ago, Harley Race defeated Pedro Morales in the final match to win the King of the Ring tournament. Race also defeated George Animal Steel and Nikolai Volkov. 30 years ago, WCW presented the Great American Bash. This marked the first pay-per-view for WCW without Ric Flair, who had left/fired. The crowd would chant, "We want Flair," and some of the performers weren't at their best, as this was voted the worst major show of 91. Lex Luger defeated Barry Windham in a steel cage match to win the vacated WCW World Heavyweight Championship.
Gotta love Paul Heyman in neon colors.
Oh, yeah. 26 years ago at UFC 6 Clash of the Titans, Ken Shamrock defeated Dan Severn via submission to win the UFC Super Fight Championship. And Oleg Taktarov defeated Tank Abbott in the finals via submission to win the UFC 6 tournament. 24 years ago on Raw's War from San Antonio, Texas, Stone Cold Steve Austin and Dude Love defeated Owen Hart and the British Bulldog to win the vacated WWF Tag Team Championship belts that were stripped from Michaels and Austin. This was apparently a punishment to Michaels, who got in some heat for a backstage confrontation with Brett. And was this not the debut of Dude Love?
This was the birth of Dude Love, and I guess he was even wearing Bob Holly's pure white boots at the time. They had just made that shirt like maybe 2 days before for him, And they did this photo shoot afterwards, and they have some goofy photos that they took. His wife ended up appearing in one of the photos as well. They actually talked about that night on the recent Broken Skull session that Foley did with Steve, because they used to travel together when they were working in WCW. So they've been friends for a long while. And this is when Foley was trying to be his tag team partner and kept on getting told, no, go away. And I think that was his Mankind. And next thing you know, the Dude showed up, and they got the tag titles.
Oh, right. Indeed. And I did enjoy actually watching that Broken Skull. 12 years ago, Wayne Coleman, best known as Superstar Billy Graham, auctions off his WWE Hall of Fame ring on eBay as a response to his release from his position as a consultant for WWE. He would get $11,500 for the ring. What a douche.
Yeah, he is so wishy-washy. One moment he's okay with WWE, and then next thing you know, he's harshly criticizing them, and just I don't know what the guy really wants. He just wants fame more than anything now, instead of just being quiet and going away. Like, he's one of those guys, even though I mentioned I didn't care one way or another if people chose to do steroids. We know what steroids did to him, and we even got to see surgeries of that in like '88 on Superstars of Wrestling, when he was taken out by Butch Reed and One Man Gang. So yeah, I feel sorry for the guy. He bounces back and forth so much.
8 years ago, WWE presented Money in the Bank from Philly. In a pre-show match, The Shield, which was Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns, defeated the Usos to retain the WWE Tag Team Championship. Damian Sandow defeated Dean Ambrose, Fandango, Cody Rhodes, Wade Barrett, Antonio Cesaro, and Jack Swagger in a Money in the Bank ladder match. Alberto Del Rio defeated Dolph Ziggler to retain the World Heavyweight Championship. John Cena defeated Mark Henry to retain the WWE Championship belt. And Randy Orton defeated CM Punk, Daniel Bryan, Sheamus, Christian, and Rob Van Dam in the other Money in the Bank ladder match. And finally, July 15th. 54 years ago in San Francisco, NWA United States Champion San Francisco version, Ray Stevens defeated WWF Champion Bruno Sammartino via countout. 19 years ago on Raw from East Rutherford, Vince McMahon would introduce Eric Bischoff, who was the former president of WCW, as he was revealed to be the new GM of Raw. This was a great debut for a man we never thought would be hugging Vince McMahon on TV.
Yeah, I actually had a gif of them hugging, but it was too big to load up onto here. But nobody ever thought that would happen. I didn't like the backstage. I think they somewhat gave it away when they were about to have him come out, and Booker T saw him and says, "Tell me I did not just see that." And then out came Eric Bischoff, and they hugged and shook hands and raised each other's hands. And he was doing originally a Back in Black song that came out from AC/DC. But I think copyright reasons, they had to change it to his own song, which I liked better than just using AC/DC Back in Black. It was somewhat of a takeoff on it anyways that they did with him. But yeah, definitely something that nobody would have expected to see. I don't know if WCW had beat WWE in the war and the roles were reversed, if Vince would have gone to WCW, or if even if Eric Bischoff would have extended an invitation to have that happen. And I guess it was possible that it could have happened sooner. Part of that whole failed invasion angle, that I guess Jim Ross did reach out to Eric Bischoff trying to do something, with him just before the invasion started, but because he was vague in what they were going to do, Eric didn't come forward because he was asking what it would be about or what they wanted, and they weren't. Jim Ross didn't really have a concrete thing for him. And had they maybe said something a little more solid, they could have had him there leading at least the invasion. But we already saw that Shane McMahon was supposed to be the owner of WCW anyway. So what would Eric have been doing?
He could have said, no, that contract was signed when I was drunk or something. I don't know. 15 years ago, Brock Lesnar is stripped of the IWGP Heavyweight Championship following a dispute between Lesnar and New Japan Pro Wrestling over visa issues. Lesnar would leave the company 2 days later, and a tournament for the belt would crown a new champion in Tanahashi as he beat Giant Bernard in the finals. 14 years ago, TNA presented Victory Road. We saw Christopher Daniels win a Ultimate X Gauntlet match to become the #1 contender for the TNA X Division Championship. Motor City Machine Guns defeated Jerry Lynn and Bob Backlund. Yeah, Bob Backlund, wow. Kurt Angle and Samoa Joe defeated Team 3D in the match of champions, and only Samoa Joe ended up leaving with the TNA World Tag Team Championship. As Angle's TNA World Belt and Samoa Joe's X Division belt and the tag belts were also at stake, per pre-match stipulations, the winner of the fall won the Losers Championship. As Samoa Joe won the fall, he won the tag titles for himself and screwed over Angle and kept both tag titles for himself. TNA had a lot of weird stipulations in their matches.
Yeah.
9 years ago. Sorry, go ahead.
I don't mind things like that. It's kind of interesting. If you do it sparingly, WWE did it when they had Shawn Michaels and Diesel taking on Owen and Yoko, I think it was, for the tag titles, and then Owen wasn't there and Bulldog took over. They did pull a dusty finish on that, but I don't mind that sort of exciting concept where all the titles can be on the line in one match and you don't know which way it's going to end up going. If it's used sparingly, it's decent.
All right. 9 years ago, WWE presented Money in the Bank. In the pre-show match, Kofi Kingston and R-Truth defeated Unico and Camacho. Dolph Ziggler defeated Damian Sandow, Christian, Santino Marella, Tenzai, Tyson Kidd, Cody Rhodes, and Sin Cara in a Money in the Bank ladder match. And John Cena defeated a whole bunch of them, The Big Show, The Miz, Kane, and Chris Jericho in a Money in the Bank ladder match. Few birthdays before we go. It's a happy 38th birthday to Heath Miller, a.k.a. Heath Slater. Slater, the fourth place finisher of the first NXT competition, a four-time WWE Tag Team Champion, and is the leader, or was the leader, of the three-man band stable. He's actually a very funny man. I do enjoy his work.
And actually, our friends over at Such Good Shoot podcast that usually happens 10 o'clock, 10:05 after our Scumbags Wrestling podcast on Thursdays. They just recently had Heath Miller on their podcast, so it's worth a check out of Such Good Shoot.
Yes. Two more birthdays. It's a happy 70th to James George Genos, a.k.a. Jesse the Body Ventura. And it's a happy 79th birthday to Aaron Rodriguez, a.k.a. Lucha Libre legend Mil Mascaras. And that is it for This Week in Wrestling. Of course, This Week in Wrestling history is compiled from the vast land of Google, Wikipedia, CageSideSeats.com, and most importantly, from fans and journalists that had front row seats to history. And a big thank you to our sponsor, of course, Coolbet, Coolbet.com, and sports book betting and casino games. Stay cool, bet responsibly.
Yes, as always, we want to thank them for being part of it. And remind you to check out our store at ProWrestlingTees.com/ScumbagsWrestling. We got our t-shirts on for sale. and the money raised from those events, those shirts, will help out Steven's wrestling journey and carry malformation study through Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto. And of course, I mentioned earlier that we are part of the All Ontario Cup that is being hosted by Barrie Wrestling. And we actually have our own bracket named after us, the Scumbags bracket. And it's a part of the reopening of everything going on. More details will be revealed later on our podcast, which is going to be this Saturday, leading into Slammiversary on Saturday and Money in the Bank for Sunday. And of course, we'll be doing previews of those two events as part of our Scumbags Prediction League. And you can end up earning points for prizes this weekend only exclusively, and also towards our championship belt. So more details if you go to our website, scumbagswrestling.ca. So that's pretty much all we got right now. We're going to hopefully have some more information on Ribfest as things go along as well, for everybody here in the London area and southwestern Ontario for that reason, for that matter. Come out, enjoy some ribs over the Civic Holiday weekend. There's going to be some entertainment and I think another festival part of that. So we'll have more
Punk Fest, which I believe is going to be on the Saturday, is happening downtown as well. Pretty much right beside Ribfest. So it's going to be an interesting weekend. We'll see how everything goes with the launch of a festival. It will be barricaded in, but it's going to have 8 of the ribbers. There's a few. I think there's a couple new ones. One that I'm telling you, I can't wait because I don't think I've had his ribs yet, but I've had pretty much everything else he's made. Gonzalez. He's been at many of the food fests. He was at the Western Fair. I think the last maybe 2 years they did the fair. He has absolutely delicious meat. I've never tasted anything better than what this guy has put out there. So we'll see how he does, and of course some of the regulars will be there. So it should be a fun event.
Yeah. So we're close with the organizers of Ribfest, and we want to give them a shout out, and we'll continue to do that between now and the event itself. Be watching our podcast and also our Facebook page for more details. We'll be sharing there so that get some people out and enjoy some great ribs and the outdoors while we can.
Yeah, and of course craft beer if you're into the beer.
Excellent. So thanks again for all your research, Jonesy, and we will see you on our next episode next week, next Thursday, on YouTube, Facebook, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or everywhere else you get podcasts from. Have a great one.
Toodles!